Welcome to the very first episode of Armor Talks, powered by Armor Zero. Hi everyone, I'm Janica, your host for today. So our topic for today is cybersecurity, achieving the hole-in-one of digital defense. So joining us here is a very special guest, Tony Smith. So Tony, who is also a good friend of ours at Armor Zero, is a Regional Vice President for Southeast Asia at Secure. So Tony is a cybersecurity evangelist, having extensive years of experience in this industry. He's been in the United Kingdom and now based in Singapore. So hi Tony, thank you for agreeing to be our very first guest, and it's great to have you here.
Oh, Janica, you're really welcome. I'm really excited to be the first guest at Armor Talk, but really excited about the discussion that we've got lined up today. For me also to wish our listeners a very warm welcome to this Armor Talk podcast.
Awesome. So before we dive into our exciting topic today, Tony, could you do a quick introduction about yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. Janica, as you said right at the start, in fact, I moved to Singapore fairly recently. I was working in the UK before that. And I've been in cybersecurity for about 6 years now. And before that, quite a long history of telecoms and technology businesses. And in every business that I've worked, I've always tried to find that area where I can add the most value. And I'll be honest with you, the cybersecurity industry has really captured my heart. And I think it's mostly because I really can identify with the mission that we have as an industry. All right. And yeah, I work with Secure. We're one part of that cybersecurity community, a really important part of that community globally. But for me, the mission that we all have together is around making sure that the bad guys don't win. And so from that perspective, I really enjoy the work that we do as an organization and the work that I do as an individual to contribute to that. And as you say, I'm an evangelist. I go around talking about things that are really important to people. How do we keep them secure? So I'm hoping that even in today's conversation, our listeners will be able to take something away from it and go, oh, right, I never thought of it that way before, or, oh, wow, that's an interesting perspective. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Pleasure to have you. So let's dive right in. Tony,
Sure.
We know you are a huge fan of sports. I think we can tell from the room you're in right now. Literally all kind of sports. So would you be able to share with us what has sports taught you about the industry that you're specializing in right now, in this case, cybersecurity?
Yeah. Well, look, there are two things absolutely for sure. For anyone who's met me, they'll know these two things. Number one, I'm a huge sports fan. I love all kinds of sports. Mostly things with a ball or some kind of object that people pass around. And the second thing is that I've learned that there are loads of parallels between the cybersecurity industry that I work in and that I really love. And of course, this other big passion of mine, which is sport. And so it makes it really easy for me to understand when I think about cybersecurity principles and strategies in the language of sport. And in fact, I did a conference talk in Australia at the start of the year. Exactly. It was called Cybersecurity Principles Translated into Sport, or translated from sport. So I talk about it a lot and it's really relatable. I think that's what the most important message there is. So for example, I'll give you two examples. Number one, incident response. When there's a cyber attack or cyber incident, you're going to need really solid incident response. And for me, through the conversations that I have with security leaders, they all tell me, not enough people rehearse the processes and procedures for a major cyber incident. When I speak to them, many of them admit they haven't done a cyber fire drill in a long time. But of course, in every sphere of life, practice makes perfect. So you've got to practice these things in order to make sure that when the pressure comes of a big cyber incident, you're going to be able to deal with it efficiently and effectively. And of course, practice makes perfect really resonates in sport. The sports example of that is there's a very famous golfing story. You mentioned the title of the podcast, how to achieve the hole-in-one of cybersecurity. And there's a very famous story about a South African golfing legend called Gary Player. And he was practicing one day out of the bunker next to a green, out of the sand, and he was hitting some really good shots. And occasionally one would go in the hole. And of course, it's a difficult thing to do. I've tried it myself. I can remember holing one from a bunker. So it's difficult. But a lady walked past watching him practice and she said to him, "Gee, Mr. Player, you're awfully lucky, aren't you?" And he goes, "Yes, madam, you're absolutely right. The more I practice, the luckier I get." And so that, fun story really does relate to how it's important to be consistent with practice and obviously look for continual improvement. But of course, there's a second example where we look at the language of cybersecurity and the language of sport. We can make the two relatable. The second example is managed detection and response. So those same security leaders that I talk to, they also share that having the right skills on their team is essential. But of course, they build layers into their structure. And what it means is some of the most experienced members of the team, who might be like level 3 analysts, they'll only get to see the high escalation cases. And the result, of course, is that the junior resources are dealing with a high volume of quite low level incidents, but the senior resources only get involved maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Now, the sporting parallel is, look, no one buys a Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, to use football examples, or maybe use a basketball example. No one's going to buy LeBron James onto their team and then sit them on the bench for the whole season, and only bring them out for a cup final. No, they want them in the games, as many games as they can during the season, because they have to keep them match fit. They have to be sharp. And when the pressure builds, they've got to be able to deal with that pressure. Being ready means having all the resources and all the tools, of course, ready for that cup final moment. And so we'll call it the cyber event cup final. When that is upon us as an organization, that's when the most pressure is applied. And that's when you need your whole team to be on their best form. So just 2 examples there.
Yeah, I love those 2 examples, Tony. Really love that. Tony, just as golfer, they need precision when it comes to putting. How does attention to detail play a role in your cybersecurity approach? Would you be able to share an example of how a small security measure would be able to make a significant impact?
Indeed, you mentioned golf there. Yeah, I love golf. I'm a big golf fan, and I enjoy playing too. But the question you've asked has quite a broad application. It's about attention to detail. And so there would be loads of examples I probably could share with you today and with the audience. But I'll share this one. I'll pick this one example where I would say, if you're going to look at attention to detail, a lot of people talk about controlling the controllables. In fact, it's a phrase we hear in sports all the time, controlling the controllables. And it's the same in cybersecurity. There are things that we can focus on that are within our grasp, that if we focus on those effectively, we'd be able to limit the kind of risk that we face as an organization, for example. So when I think back at sports, every team can only control the facets of the game that they have control of. So if it's a ball sport, typically, in ball sports, maybe like rugby or football or basketball, having possession of the ball is the key. And of course, when you have the ball, then you've got control of what happens in the next passage of play. So you can control where you go on the field. And it's the same with cybersecurity, just focusing on controlling the things that are in your grasp. So an example of the controllables in cybersecurity is the concept of configuration. So the way we set our systems and our organization up for success. The relatable example is, if we look at cloud security, we see that there's still an overwhelming proportion of breaches that arise as a result of misconfiguration. Now, depending on which sources you get, those stats from, the range of those cloud incidents caused by misconfiguration can range from between 40% and 70% of all cloud security incidents. So it's quite a big range, but it still means there's a lot of incidents that actually are things we should be able to control. They're misconfiguration, related. And we've certainly seen in our incident response team, we've certainly seen our fair share of cloud incidents, organizations that are under attack. The thing about controlling the controllables is that in this context, these misconfigurations are preventable, right? These are things that we can focus our attention on. And it would be the same as if we would let our last defender. So for example, in a soccer game, it would be the same as us sending the goalkeeper up the field to go and help with an attacking play, but leaving the goal wide open. All right. No one necessarily wants to do that. Now, we've seen that happen in games where it might be the last minute of the game, and the coach decides we've got to throw everything at it because we need that goal. But at the same time, that you're vulnerable. And it's that aspect of misconfiguration that's really within our grasp that we really need to get a hold of. They're things that can be fixed and things that can be prevented. So I guess our top tip there is, don't give the guys a chance to get into that goal at the end. Pay attention to configuration, because it's a really important part of your security strategy.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Tony. I think we are really seeing, more news about all these cloud security incidents all over the news these days, right? And I very much agree with you that all of these are preventable. Yeah. So the next one, golfers rely on caddies for guidance.
Yeah.
How do you view the role of expertise advice and collaboration in a cybersecurity environment? What would be your thoughts on collaboration with external expertise to enhance an organization's defensive strategies?
Yeah. Wow. What a great question about caddies in golf. Another golf example. I think with caddies, you've got to remember that the concept of a caddy in golf is there as an assistant and as a guide and as a data source for the golfer. And that relationship, it's really built on a solid relationship. And yes, caddies and golfers change from time to time, but many golfers and the professional golfers that we see on the circuit stay with the same caddy for a long time because it's all about the trust that they develop between them. I mean, there isn't a polite way really to say this, but there are parts of the cybersecurity industry that have developed quite a tarnished reputation, especially for using these big, bold marketing slogans or sales tactics, we stop this or we guarantee that. And of course, it's not always possible to guarantee everything. People say, we guarantee you can't get attacked. No, nobody can guarantee you can't get attacked. In fact, our experience is even with good defensive posture, you could still be a target. And so from that perspective, we've got some rebuilding of trust to do as an industry, I think. And of course, no one really likes the concept of an ambulance chaser, or a big incident. Oh, well, let's phone them and then try and sell them a service or offer a service. Look, we're here to help. And I think that's exactly what the caddy does. He understands the player is under pressure. And when the player's in the pressure cooker, the caddy knows the right thing to say and to do to provide that kind of guidance. We have to recognize that I think among the thousands and thousands of cybersecurity companies around the world, no one organization has that silver bullet solution. No one organization can solve your whole challenge in terms of cybersecurity risk. But, we invite organizations to consider and deploy a mixture of solutions, perhaps a mixture of tools or even services in order to appropriately defend themselves from the threats they face. I mean, the big question is going to be, who's your caddy, right? Or put more politely, like, who do you trust? Who do you build a relationship with? And a phrase that I developed, in fact, 2 years ago now, is that we work in the trust economy. We need the trust of our customers in order to deliver the best outcomes from them. We think we've got some really good solutions. For example, we work with partners like Armour Zero, where together we have good solutions for the marketplace, but our customers need to trust us, and developing that trust, can take some time and some investment, some effort. But our business, like yours, is built on research, and our willingness, of course, is to offer that research to the industry. So we try and raise the bar for anyone who will listen and anyone who wants to learn. But if we pay attention in the sea of marketing noise, of course, we can find reliable sources. And finding those reliable sources of information and trust is the key to achieving the right outcomes. As I said, we talk a lot about outcomes and delivering the right results, not just, hey, what are the right metrics? Does this thing do all the right things? Well, what are we trying to prevent effectively? What are the impacts of a breach that we can prevent? And it all comes down to partnership. And just as a side note, actually, we have launched a service at WithSecure called co-monitoring. I mean, the whole principle of it relates to partnership between our customers and ourselves, and of course our partners like you at Armour Zero.
Yeah, I love that how you mentioned that trust. It's really the essential part. It's not only in partnership. I do believe it applies to any relationship or even in the business world itself, right? Trust is the most essential part before it can actually lead us to any outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tony, the very last questions we have. So golf consists of 18 holes. So how do you approach cybersecurity as a continuous journey rather than a one-time effort? Any elaboration you can share with us about how an organization's long-term security strategy that would actually align with the notion of an 18-hole approach?
Yeah, again, another great, we're focusing a lot on golf today, aren't we? But another great application with golf here. Remember, a golf tournament, of course, it's 18 holes in a round, and you'd play 4 rounds, so 72 holes in a professional competition. And of course, you're playing on a golf course where there are many obstacles too. There's sand, there's water, there are trees. There might be some tight fairways, really narrow spaces you have to play through. Tricky greens perhaps with lots of slope on them and undulation and so on. So there's a whole lot of factors that come into thinking about how you approach, playing that particular golf course. In fact, I once heard a golf professional say that he said, I can't win this tournament on day one, but I sure could lose it. So what he was really talking about there is that you're not going to be able to win the competition just by scoring a hole-in-one, for example. I mean, it certainly helps your scorecard and it's something to celebrate. I've never had a hole-in-one myself, though I've come quite close. But you need to be consistent over the period, over the duration of that competition in order to deliver an excellent performance. And it's the same with cybersecurity. You know, it's about consistency, doing things consistently and improving along the way. Of course, a poor start in a competition, in a golf competition, or a poor start in your cybersecurity journey, of course, means that it sets you back in a way that often you can struggle. You end up chasing the game. You're right. You end up struggling to catch up. And so from that perspective, there isn't just one big thing that you can or should do to ensure that your cybersecurity is in the right kind of shape. I guess that's where we're coming from. You know, your question was around how do you approach cybersecurity as a continuous journey? So because there's not one big thing that can kind of fix it, there's no silver bullet. Of course, the opposite is true. Actually, it's about doing a lot of small things really well. You know, getting the right security outcomes means that you might have to make some little improvements along the way. In fact, there's a sporting principle, and it's used in sports. I'm sure it's relevant to business today as well. There's a principle called marginal gains. It talks about continuous improvement. In other words, marginal gains are those little 1%ers. If you can improve the little 1%ers, all of a sudden it adds up to something big. There's a famous supermarket chain in the UK. Their slogan is "Every little helps." And of course, the same is true in cybersecurity as well. You know, every little thing that you can do to improve along the way helps. So in cybersecurity, you know, doing the basics well, it sets you on a solid foundation. And of course, there's loads of free resources and advice that you can also access to do the basics well. I mean, a number of national agencies, for example, the national cyber agencies like here in Singapore, certainly in the UK, in America, they all have some resources that you can lean on and that you can look at. You know, all around Southeast Asia, each of our national agencies will have the same kind of advice. And so there's some easy things that you can do to do the basics well. But I think I'd round up this particular question and round it up with what I'm going to call Tony's top tip, all right? And it's a number of little things that you can do, like we were just talking about in marginal gains. Look around the market. You know, get views from and opinions from your peers, people who do the same kind of work as you, maybe in the same sort of industry. You know, network, find out about you know, what are they doing what are the challenges that they're facing and what are they doing to overcome them? Ask them who they work with and try and find out why. You know, why is it that they worked with that partner? Why is it that they trusted that solution? And so on. And then, of course, the crucial thing is ask them what the outcomes are that they deliver. All right. Don't just think about, oh, it looks good or it's a big brand, because there's a lot of hype marketing as well in our industry. So you've got to look at what are the outcomes that everyone's delivering. So you need a variety of skills, and finding the right cybersecurity partner is a lot like picking a world-class sports team. You know, you need a broad range of skills. You want to pick from the very best that are available as much as possible. I mean, you might need to look outside of the familiar places as well. So, yeah, do some research. But I think fundamentally it comes down to this one thing. Put the principles of partnership first. Because if you put partnership first and trust first, you get to experience the best of those solutions. You get to experience the best of those providers, the service providers. And of course, because you trust them, you allow them the opportunity to deliver that best experience too. That's what I'd say, kind of a top tip about collaboration, focusing on the right kind of partnerships.
I love that pro tips. I think that's really a very good way of putting it. It's very easy to understand. And I love how you mentioned that the principle of partnership first. Because a lot of time, I guess businesses, when they come in, they set their objective, on a different level, when they are actually, not facing or looking at what's the fundamental right there. So I definitely love that. Yeah. So
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Tony. That was really an insightful sharing, and I thoroughly enjoy it, especially, how you actually relate it to golf.
Oh, good.
I really love that part. So thank you once again for coming onto the podcast.
You're very welcome. I hope you and all the listeners have a fantastic day. And of course, there's loads of other sporting applications we can chat about too, with loads of other sports. But I hope they enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So if you'd like to listen to more content like this, please consider to like and subscribe and help us grow. See you at the next episode.